twin evils of superstition and craven fear. In this respect, we sin chiefly in two ways. First, in their search for God's truth, men do not, sadly, go beyond the limits of their nature as they should. Rather, they judge God's greatness according to their own crude understanding. They comprehend him not as he has made himself known, but according to the image which they themselves have arrogantly fashioned. In the process, they open up an abyss into which, whatever way they turn, they must necessarily fall, to their own perdition. For whatever they may later strive to do to serve God, they can gain no credit with him, because they honor not him, but in his stead their own private conceits. Thus, the empty excuse which many commonly use to cover their superstition is swept away. For they think that any religious inclination of whatever sort and however confused will suffice. They never reflect that true religion must conform to God's will as to a permanent norm, and that God always remains true to himself. He is not a ghost who takes whatever form an individual may fancy. It is easy, indeed, to see how, the victim of its own empty illusions, superstition mocks God whenever it tries to please him. It only fastens on the things which God expressly says mean nothing to him. It ignores those which he has commanded and which he has said are acceptable to him, or else it openly rejects them. Therefore all, who wishing to honor God set up religions of their own devising, are merely worshipping their own fantasies. For they would never have ventured to trifle with God if they had not first fashioned him according to their whims. That is why the Apostle teaches that an uncertain and confused notion of God amounts to ignorance of him. When you did not know God, he writes, you are serving those who by nature are no gods at all. In another text, he declares that the Ephesians were without God as long as they had no true knowledge of him. In that respect, it makes little difference whether we conceive of one God or many, seeing that in the end we renounce and abandon the true God. Once we desert him, all that remains is accursed idolatry. That is why we must conclude, with Lactantius, that no religion is valid which is not also joined to truth. The second error which men commit is that they think about God only reluctantly when necessity compels them. They are not moved by fear born of reverence for his majesty, but only by dread of his judgment, which fills them with terror because they cannot escape it. They heartily curse it notwithstanding. What a pagan poet wrote strictly applies to irreligion, and only to irreligion. Fear was what first brought reverence for God into the world. To be sure, all whose hearts are far from God's righteousness would be glad if his judgment seat, which they know is set for the punishment of all unrighteousness, were overthrown. It is this wish which makes them wage war on God, who cannot remain as God unless he is also judge. But because they know that his power over them is inescapable, for they can neither suppress nor avoid it, they are afraid of it. So in order not to appear utterly contemptuous of his majesty, they observe some form of religion such as it is. Yet all the while they persist in defiling themselves with all kinds of vice and in heaping one sin upon another, until they have wholly transgressed the Lord's holy law and put his righteousness to flight. Or at the very least, the fear which they pretend to feel is not enough to stop them resting easy in their sin, indulging themselves and preferring to give fleshly excess free rein, rather than bringing it under the Holy Spirit's control.